had that problem too with feds, right? And like the Proud Boys stuff and all that.
Oh yeah, they totally infiltrated the club.
You think Tucker only has normal size balls?
Tucker's balls have been the same. I've been measuring them. They haven't actually increased in size.
I'm sure you've seen the red pill movement. It's like blown up out of nowhere, essentially.
Pearl, she's really been pushing it recently. I totally understand Pearl's logic, and she's right about everything she says, but she should also know that the end of marriage is the end of civilization.
Thanks for jumping on here, by the way.
Yeah, no problem.
We appreciate you helping the small up and coming Gen Z creators.
You guys seem pretty dangerous. I want to get on with you before you get killed.
We did see, I saw that you were like scrolling through our YouTube feed were you on Anthony's show a couple days ago or something like that? Yeah. Saw that on Twitter. That was funny.
What's going to happen is there's going to be about 6 women who come out from your past saying you raped them.
Well, I'm a virgin, so
you're like, wait, I was 7 years old back then.
So wait, what did you see? Did you see our Epstein doc, or what content did you watch?
Yeah, when I saw the Epstein thing, I was like, well, they're toast. Bye bye.
Well, I mean, YouTube is still housing us, which is good. I mean, we'll see how long that lasts, but we're following all the TOS, so hopefully we can stay on there for as long as possible.
Usually, just having me as a guest is a death sentence.
Well, we had I don't know if you know Ryan Dawson. We were also told that guy was a death sentence to have on. So far it's still up. It's been 3 weeks maybe. So fingers crossed.
We featured you in we made a little documentary about actually the Unibomber, and we featured a clip from you. It's kind of a weird segue, but yeah, the Unibomber has like this whole critique of leftism, and one of the things he says was like perfect for like a viral clip that you had where you're like just destroying some feminists or something like that. So you're already on our page a little bit, so we're not nuked yet. Pray the Lord.
You got to be careful. You got to be careful when you quote the Unibomber, because a lot of the stuff he said was brilliant and totally accurate. So you can't say the Unibomber says. You just go, a lot of people have said that violence is the only thing that really affects change. And you just hope they don't go, who said that? Oh, a guy.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Guy.
We're just asking to get our channel nuked, but
no, we'll be fine. I think we'll be good here. But have you read the Unibomber's critique of leftism? It's honestly one of the most just genius critiques I've ever seen.
Yeah, I did, and his manifesto is hard to argue with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't condone violence, but they should teach it in school, and they, in the sense that you should have to refute it. You know what I mean? Mm. Like, tell me why this is wrong. If academia it was worth its salt, there would be so many different things you could do. Like they have to understand they need to take on the worst thing, like take on Holocaust deniers, take on pedophiles, take on everything, and show the students why it's wrong. Instead, they teach kids to run away from anything that confuses them and assume it doesn't exist. It makes them weaker in many ways.
That's so true. And like, I mean, we barely have any school system now. It's just even worse than it was when I was in school. So it's a downward spiral, getting worse and worse, especially after
my kid's
COVID.
High school, it wasn't his class, but one of the assignments was the white privilege, the unpacking the invisible backpack. You know about this?
The invisible backpack.
No, please do tell.
It's like a dead thing from the late 80s, early 90s, about how white people are always walking around with this invisible backpack of privilege. And everywhere we go, we put it down and we unpack it. So say me and a black guy go to a restaurant and they go, are there any tables available? The woman will look at me and get me a table. And that's me unpacking my invisible backpack. It has nothing to do with, is this going to be a repeat customer? Did I have trouble with this other guy in the past? No pattern recognition. It's just white people are spoiled rotten, really. And the problem with teaching that in school is you get more of this Ryan, what's his name? Carson, who got his throat slit the other night because he had no instincts.
Did you see they were blurring that guy's face too on all the news outlets?
Yes. I meant to cover that today.
Isn't that crazy?
Dude, that was in our notes. Yeah, the MMA dude, the Marine who took down that dude with a knife who's going to kill everyone on the subway. They show his face when he's getting arrested because he's a white male who hurt a black male. But this guy, they're blurring. It's actually pretty common. Every time you hear about a heinous crime and it's like Darius Jackson, you got to like take that, put it in quotes, and then try in several different browsers, Google image, and eventually you'll find some local news source where they fucked up and printed his picture.
Yeah, you got to use Yandex.
Yeah, Yandex is the way to find stuff. You got to use Russian search engines to be able to find anything these days. It's
What's
crazy.
that called? What's the URL?
It's Yandex.
Yandex. It's just a search engine that doesn't censor as much, but
as much.
Yeah, that's where we found a lot of the information about Epstein, actually, which is kind of interesting because they censor the hell out of certain subjects. I mean, you know, and they flood the front with all the bullshit, you know, because obviously when you even look up your name, you got to weed through like 30 hit pieces just to find like a, you know, something that just resembles the truth in any kind of way. So, but
and it's an old piece. It'll be an article from like 12 years ago. It's very hard to find anything remotely fair post-Trump.
Yeah, that's true.
Why do you think that? I mean, my assertion is that they think that Trump, part of the reason why he was got to his presidency was because of the use of social media and going viral and stuff like that. So immediately when he got in office, they were like, no more. And that was like when all the censorship picked up and stuff like that. Is that how you foresee the timeline happening there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of what happened. An outsider became president. And I think a lot of the guys in the deep swamp are scared of the deep swamp. It's like they're in the mafia, like they can't get out. As soon as they're out, they pull you back in again. It's blood in, blood out. So the deep state cronies are just as scared as the deep state as we are. And somehow an outsider, some random millionaire, managed to push through the gates and get in. And I think the real deep state said, all right, that is never happening again. No more Ross Perot's, no more independent businessmen. We're never, ever doing this again. We have to make sure it doesn't happen. So one of the ways to make sure that doesn't happen is to blitzkrieg this guy and make sure he ends up in prison and everyone is too scared to do it. Destroy everyone around him, destroy everyone who supports him. Let's sick the FBI on all Trump supporters. We'll call them MAGA extremists and say they're the number one threat. And we'll call them all Nazis too. That way people get that they're bad guys. They're all white supremacist Nazis that want to gas Jews and take over the world. And that's the narrative they're running with. And it's a very effective narrative.
Yeah, you had that problem too with feds, right? And like the Proud Boys stuff and all that.
Oh yeah, they totally infiltrated the club. What they would do with the club is they'd get a guy who has, like, say he's a felon, he's on probation. They catch him with a gun or a magazine or something. And they go, look, here's the deal. You got 3 kids. We could give you 20 years for this gun charge, or you could become an informant. But as I keep screaming to everyone, including the COs, by the way, when I would visit Max and John, these 2 Proud Boys who went to jail for a fight with Antifa way before January 6th, the COs would say, what does John know? And I would scream at them, there's nothing to inform. There's no plan. Like, does El Chapo say that? Do people with plans say that? They don't say that. There is no secrets here. It's just a men's club. And I think the fact that a men's club has kind of got a cool background, you know, you could link it to Vice and hipsters or whatever, and shock jocks through Kumi and everything, because there's an unnerdy Trump fan base. It freaks the out of the left because it converts young men. And also it scares the left because these guys are men. It's that simple. Like the mainstream doesn't like men congregating.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bigger point there, as like it's like a hedge against revolution. And like the left obviously hates them for their own reasons, but the system really can't have, because I mean, a revolution is nothing more than just men staying in one place saying like, we're not putting up with this shit anymore. And I mean, there's a reason why J6 has been in the media like ever since it happened. They won't shut up about it. But I mean, yeah, in terms of feds, Enrique Tarrio, we saw like a month ago, got sentenced to 22 years in prison, which is interesting.
I think it's 33. Ryan, the kitchen show. Play assets behind me. This is crucial.
33 years.
I think it's 22. I just checked earlier. But nonetheless, either way, it doesn't.
Well, I know that if you accumulate all the Proud Boys who were at January 6th, you get up to 88 years. And
wow.
That's not the first time they've been sentenced. Like Max and John did 4 years each. So that's 8. We're up to 96. There was this guy, Trigger Tommy. He was terrorized by Antifa so much. He He left town. He left Portland. He moved to Chicago. They found him there. They got in a fight. He was never a victim, but he was always a target. They got in a fight at a pool hall. He's beating the crap out of dudes with a pool cue. Eventually, he gets cornered at a show. I think it was a Rancid show, and he's the only non-crusty lefty there. They see who he is. They corner him, and so he pulls out a knife as a like get back. And I don't know, man. There's something about people these days. They don't see a knife or a gun as a deterrent. So they just kept marching at him. So he cut up 2 guys, not very badly or anything, but that got him 3 years. So that's 101 years of Proud Boys going to jail. And in none of the cases was it anything that deserves jail or prison.
Yeah, but specifically with this guy, Enrique Tarrio, whatever the sentence he got, it's interesting that he even got a sentence at all because he was an informant. But I guess something that came to my attention is that this is actually what happens to informants a lot, is that they basically are treated like a bitch of the FBI or whoever the informant was. And so they get kicked to the curb regardless. So they actually aren't given special treatment, even though they're informants. Is that kind of how you see it too?
100%. Yeah. I don't have Enrique totally figured out. Sometimes days I hate him, sometimes I don't. But I don't think he was an informant in the sense that the left wants him to be. Like, we're going to go do this, tell me what to do next. And this guy is planning this, like not in the snitch sense. But you're right in that every informant, whether they're just a random dude who says we're having a rally on Thursday, or a guy who says, I want to help you, throw this dude in jail, or a translator in Afghanistan. Like in all these cases, as soon as they're done with you, they throw you away. And I tell this to people who I think might be considering talking to feds. I go, it's not like, it is in the movies where once you're made, you're good for life. You have to keep producing. And if you're not giving them bodies or arrests, you're toast. So it's very possible Tarrio was a full-on informant, right? Like, take the most snitchy way you can. And even in that scenario, they're like, man, we got our January 6th. We're done with you. We don't want to look like we were, your bitch. So they just throw you in jail. You know the guy who discovered bin Laden? He was a doctor in Pakistan, and he came up with this concept of, I'll go door to door and I'll do these like smears, right? These samples. Pap smear is a pussy, right? Well, I'll do these little samples. And I'll say, I'm going door to door to prevent this disease. There's a bad flu going around, and we're going to vaccinate everyone and make sure they don't get sick. It could be fatal. So he got samples of everyone in the entire neighborhood, including Osama bin Laden. That's how we knew we were killing the right guy. And then what did we do afterwards? We were just like, bye, and left him there. He gets thrown in a Pakistani prison with Muslims who obviously hate his fucking guts. And I doubt very much he's alive. He probably lasted a week there before he was killed. And that's how we treat someone who was like one of our greatest allies in American history.
Wow.
Damn. I had no idea about that story.
And I don't even think it's that malicious. I think it's total and utter incompetence.
Do you think that you're still being like tracked and followed by feds now?
Yeah. But there's feds are terrorists now. And they do things like what is terrorism? It's committing a violent act for political gain. They commit violent acts all the time. I think they were throwing those bombs in January 6th, or telling the police to throw those smoke bombs in order to provoke a riot. So that was an act of violence for political gain. Or the kidnapping Governor whatever her name is, Whitmer.
Yeah.
Thank God those guys got away, and the jury could see that was all bullshit. But that was our government working against us, infiltrating us, finding some losers in a basement and going, let's kidnap the governor. And after 50 suggestions, eventually 2 or 3 of them are going to go, yeah, okay. And now you've created terrorism where it wasn't. But the thing I was going to say about terrorism in general is it doesn't take a lot. Like, a Palestinian throws one bomb over the wall in Israel, and now the Israelis are constantly worried about a bomb. And the beauty of infiltrating Proud Boys as a Fed is one Fed, it turns out one guy you trusted as a Fed. Now, from now on, every single person you talk to could be a Fed. So it's like taking a big salad bowl of water and having one little eyedropper of black ink. You just go bloop, then you leave. And now that ink slowly spreads, and now the water is murky.
You're
And
100% right about that.
That's what the FBI does. I'm like, so I was with my kids the other day and we went on the ferry to the city from the Bronx and we come back and I go, I thought those guys were feds. And then I realized they were fans and they just wanted a picture. And my daughter's like, you really think that feds are going to get on a ferry to Manhattan, follow us around, come back? And I was like, you're right. That is a bit rich. But I got so, they get you so paranoid that they can just start the ball rolling and then go home.
Yeah. And that like affects too. It's not just people who are involved in politics. I think now there's like this generational thing. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. Nobody trusts the news anymore. Nobody trusts the government anymore. And it's like, it's become like a whole it's just like, there's so many memes about it now. It's a cultural movement now that just nobody trusts anybody. Everybody's could be a Fed. It really was like the Soviet just spreading.
We're living in a Soviet era. We're scared of our government.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with what you're talking about, I mean, we spoke with Dr. Robert Malone, and the term is called bad jacketing. It happens all the time in any kind of movement that is any dissident at all, where they infiltrate the movement, and then a lot of times they'll call somebody else a Fed. And I know I want to ask you about what happened in Las Vegas, where everyone was just going like this, Fed. But nonetheless, like, after that happens, you can't ever organize anything because it's just, you can't grow up in structure because everyone's just pointing fingers at each other, right? I mean, is that kind of what happened? And then,
well, rising up against the American government today would take, that's like rising up against Stalin. And the idea that they think that the guys on January 6th were there to overthrow the government that morning. Overthrowing the American government. China and Russia have been slowly chipping away at this Mount Rushmore of an institution for centuries, and especially the past few decades. So the idea that a bunch of dudes are going to take it over, I think the only hope for any kind of like political action is something like the Bundy Ranch, where they say we're shutting down this ranch, and then everyone shows up armed and says, no, you're not shutting it down. And then Obama sees that and goes, this would look really bad on my resume. Send everyone home. Like, no one's throwing over the American government. It's insane that guys are in jail right now for that ridiculous notion. But I think on a very small scale, you can say, no, you're not shutting down that ranch. Or even Drag Queen Story Hour. You find out some pedophiles can be reading to kids and you go, no, this isn't happening here. So there's chances for revolution on a very small scale, but we're being punished like it's a large scale. We're being punished like we're the IRA and this is the Troubles or something. I'm Bobby Sands involuntarily. And it's like, I was talking to Anthony Cumia the other day, and I said, you should say on Twitter that blah, blah, blah. I can't remember what it was, but like he, for some reason, was back on. But I thought, I'm sending him a secret message on an encrypted app as an anonymous person. And this is a guy I've known for 10 years. And I thought, why are we talking on encrypted apps in America? Yeah. And even then, I don't even think they're that safe.
Oh, yeah.
They're not. I mean, what happened with Tucker?
Yeah, Tucker did an interview and said that his messages were infiltrated by, I don't know what he said exactly.
He was using, I think it was Signal, and he was going to go interview Putin. And then the Fed stepped in and were like, nah. It's like, how did you guys even know?
Reliable. WhatsApp isn't reliable. Nah. Well, I've talked to Tucker occasionally. I talk to Tucker occasionally, and everything I say to him, I'm totally prepared for it to be on the headline of Daily Mail. So I would never say anything incriminating. It's always like, well, some people think that this is a problem. And he's like, yeah, like even swearing, when you say bullshit or cunt, you're like, well, I'm taking a gamble here.
It's true. YouTube does that. YouTube will censor you. I mean, there's all these like, I don't know, shadow bans, and like they don't say they're censoring you, but they definitely are. And cursing is one of them.
Why don't you DM someone on Facebook or something and say, was just talking to Gavin of censored.tv, and the DM will not go through.
No, really?
Yeah, you can't privately message this URL to people without it getting blocked. It'll just say there's a problem with or they'll say this site is raised like spam problems or something like that. And there's and that's even worse in Canada and Australia and Britain, where I'm told that plenty of providers, will not allow this site to exist.
Well, we did read. Are you in Canada? Where are you based?
I'm in the Bronx in New York.
Oh, okay.
We did see in Canada that they have this new restriction on podcasts where like if you make over a certain amount of money per podcast, you have to be registered with the country, basically with the government's, I don't know, their broadcasting registration system.
Yeah, and divulge all of the listeners to the government, so they know who's listening and they know what you're saying. You have to divulge what you're going to say too.
The content, yeah.
So that was absolutely spurred by Rebel Media, Ezra Levant's provider, Ezra Levant's network. And he's constantly attacking Justin Trudeau in a very justified way. And the police and the deep state over there. He's the Tucker of Canada, and he's doing the work of millions. And Justin Trudeau is an airhead Zoolander prime minister who's the son of Fidel Castro. And his highest priority is not being insulted. He doesn't want to ever be embarrassed again. No one likes him. No one thinks he's cool. And that's all he cares about, is being cool. There was one guy, there's a popular band in Canada called the Tragically Hip. And the singer liked Justin Trudeau, which is like the Rolling Stones liking you in 1970. So he was in heaven. He didn't care if the whole country burned. Mick Jagger likes him. And then that guy died. And the way Justin Trudeau blubbered on TV when his Mick Jagger died, it says everything you need to know about him. Like, he wasn't cool after that. And I think that's why he's gone the globalist route, because the globalist Klaus Schwab is like, I'll take you in. And he's anyone's dog for a bone at that point, because he had been dumped by the cool crowd. So anyway, that's why he has this totalitarianism. I mean, we're starting to sound like Africa. You know what I mean? This sounds like Idi Amin or Mugabe or something, where you're not allowed. You need to register if you're going to say bad things about the leader.
Yeah, there was a video I saw a video on Twitter, I think yesterday, of Justin Trudeau shaking people's hand, and he went up to one guy, and the guy took his hand away really quick and said, "I'm not shaking your hand, you piece of shit." And Justin Trudeau just like his face was just, he just like couldn't handle it.
He knew it was about to go viral too. And that crushes him. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was just watching that. And I thought, when I was watching the guy call him a piece of shit, I thought, can't you just discuss this monitoring streaming services? Can you please mention that? But he didn't. He said, who can afford to buy a house? Which is
that's also a problem. Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, when they shut down the bank accounts of the protesters and anyone who donated money to the protesters, the truckers protest, that was when they stopped. They passed this like global line that hadn't really been crossed in the, at least in first world and countries, the West, let's say. That was when shit got real. It's like, okay, this is not like, okay, he loves drag queens and okay, whatever. He's some Castro loving weirdo. It's like, oh no, this is like tyranny 101. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. I mean, I think we'll have a lot more things like I really see J6 as a scenario where they made an example. They knew they were going to make an example. They did it there, and then they've utilized it every single way possible to just quell any kind of organized dissent against the government. So there's quelling any kind of revolution, because they know that it's only get more tyrannical over time, because we're following the same globalist, agenda as Trudeau. As much as,
we used to be separate. Like, I remember Ezra Levant used to say that he used to look to Britain as a dystopian time machine to see where Canada's going to be in 5 years. And then I would say the same thing about him and Canada. But now we're all the same. Like, freezing the bank accounts in Canada was going on here. We got people on no-fly lists. We got old ladies getting their doors battered down. And the reason it's effective is 50% of the country, 50% of the West supports it. They've been brainwashed into embracing tyranny. And we saw this with COVID. They're happy to put on a mask alone in their car, and they pretend they want, defund the police. Let's have prison reform. We want less black people in jail. At the same time, they call for these draconian punishments. They want Trump to be beheaded. Like, they like communism. And you can see why communism does so well, because there's a genetic contingent of people out there who want their problems solved, who want their questions answered. And they get it with this shit. It's really disturbing how much support there's. Like, say you said murder is legal, right? And the government promoted it, and there was a purge, like the horror movie, The Purge. I optimistically hope that people would say, no, fuck that.
Very optimistic.
Laws aren't worth the paper they're written on. The people have to support it. So they always say, like, you have free speech. The government lets you have free speech. It's the people that cancel you and censor you. And I go, that's the same thing. I don't care if the state wrote the law and the people don't support it. At the end of the day, it's about what we as a society have a consensus for. And it seems that right now, Western society has a consensus that we need to be subjugated. We need to be told what to do. We need to be vaccinated. We need to have our speech monitored. And anyone who strays from that needs to be thrown in prison for a long time.
Okay, a little bit off topic here, but I do want to ask. So you started Vice. You've been in the game for a while, and I might be putting you on the spot here. But do you have any advice for us? We're kind of trying to start. We've started our own.
You want to start a multi-billion-dollar media empire?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
You're looking at the next Gavin McInnes right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
This guy's trying to grow out his beard just like yours.
I can't wait to be canceled. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I would set your hopes a little lower and focus on staying alive and staying in a jail. Let's start with that before we become media.
It's not very punk rock of you, Gavin.
We're aiming for the mood.
Well, if you want business advice, I think every company needs a hipster, a hacker, and a hustler. The hipster is obsessed with the culture and what's happening in that community, right? The hacker does all the tech thing, makes sure the website works, makes sure the processing works for the money and all that, makes sure the emails work, all that boring stuff. And then the hustler is out there getting money, getting sponsors, getting publicity, making sure that your company works. That's the secret to every business: hipster, hacker, hustler. As far as media goes, coming from the hipster version, the creative side of it, I would say what I think it was Bukowski said about writing. He said you should only write if you can't not write, and I think you should only do media if you can't not do media. Like, I don't particularly enjoy vacations. I can't wait to get to work. I got like 10 spinning plates right now. I can't wait to tackle. When my wife and kids go to bed, I get another good 2 hours. I can work on stuff that's exciting. I like this fight. I like fighting against tyranny and this culture war, the death of Western civilization. I like fighting against that. So that's why I think I've always made it even post cancellation. But if you're starting a media company and your heart isn't in it, you're going to die, metaphorically. But I also, another rule of business, we can talk about business all night. I mean, I've started about 12. You got to just accept that you're not going to make any money the first 2 years. So don't expect minimum wage for the first 2 years. And that can be pretty tough to survive, right? With no income for 2 years. But that's, a lot of people go, hey, I'm not even making minimum wage. This is bullshit. And that means you're not in it for the long haul. But I think if you're brutally honest and you admit your mistakes, there's a real need for that in modern media. You look at like Huffington Post and BuzzFeed and Washington Post and all of these pathetic news sources, even a lot of right-wing stuff like Politico, PolitiFact. I mean, they have no balls. And if you have like normal size, like Tucker-sized balls, which are normal size, you can, all kinds of scoops out there. Remember Anthony Cumia was talking about the voting controversy, and he's like, where are the journalists? Whether you're right wing or left wing, there's a lot of talk about a stolen election, and no one wants to go near it because they don't want to get sued.
You think Tucker only has normal size balls?
They seem huge in the context of where we are, but Tucker's balls have been the same. I've been measuring them for the past 25 years. They haven't actually increased in size. The environment he's in has made it more dangerous to do what he does. But if you look at Tucker's like early columns, they're pretty much the same as his journalism today. He's just a normal, honest dude that calls out bullshit when he sees it. And that's become incredibly radical in 2023. So that would be my advice to you guys: is stay radical.
Well, we're definitely good at that.
Never bad. Yeah, well, it's never a harder time to be radical, but nonetheless, someone's got to hold the line. So,
well, can I ask, is there anybody you think has abnormally large balls?
Yeah, who's got the biggest balls in the space?
The singer of AC/DC. He's got the biggest balls of them all.
Wait, why?
Unquote. Generation gap.
No, he's.
Okay.
I got it. I got you.
Balls right now, I think are Tucker, Trump, and RFK Jr. And a good metric for balls is who's the first, the most likely to be killed. And I would say, you know, if I was playing a board game called America, I would put all my security forces around Tucker, Trump, and RFK Jr. because they are over the target right now, and the target is hysterical.
What do you think? Do you think any predictions from you? Do you think any of them will get killed? I don't think RFK is going to make it far enough to get whacked, but if he does end up stirring up, I think he might. But
RFK, I don't think it's serious about running, but he's in an interesting position where he decides who wins. If he whoever he endorses, he can decide what votes he takes away from. So I think Trump will be the next president. He may do it from jail or just outside of jail. There's no way the left is going to let Biden be president again. They're going to appoint Gavin Newsom. They're going to say Biden is sick, probably COVID. That would help. And then it'll be Newsom and Kamala against Trump. And I don't know, he'll have to find some minority, some woman. You're never going to see two white males run again as president and vice president. Pence and Trump were the last. From now till the sun burns out in 40 billion years, it's going to be, you have to have at least a woman or a minority in there, which is retarded.
I mean, do you think conservatives care about diversity that much? Because it's, I mean, the vote there.
They want to kiss. Right. Yeah. They want to kiss the left's ass. They don't care themselves about it. But when I was at Fox News, I would see some gay dude come in or some black chick come in, and I was like, "Oh well, bye." It was like Squid Game. I just see them go, "Whoosh," shoot up to the top. They'd have their own show in an afternoon, no matter how talented they were. Like, who's that gay nerd? Oh God, he's on Fox News. He looks like he's 8 years old. He's like the classic gay conservative. And then there was this other chick, Ebony, Eboni, and they came in way after me, like 5 years after me. Bedford, is that his name? Oh, anyway, I just watched their careers just like blow up. And it wasn't because they were talented, but it was because Fox News desperately wanted to appease the left and take away the allegation of white supremacy. You should not. Don't do that. What you're doing there, and it's what everyone does in America and the West, is Guy Benson, that's his name. They shoot at your feet and call you racist, and you dance like a fool. Just accept that word doesn't mean anything anymore, and embrace it if you want.
You know, Fox News is owned by BlackRock anyway, so they're trying to meet their DEI.
Well, they're in New York City, so every employee is a lefty.
Yeah.
Speaking of RFK, should we go down the list? Do you want to go to the list? we have a list of people. You box, right?
Yes.
We have a list of people that we want to know if you think you'd beat them in a boxing match. Okay. First one is Destiny.
Absolutely easy peasy.
That's the warm up. Okay.
Totally out of shape. He doesn't have that killer instinct. He's a smart dude. I like him, by the way. But
he's smart.
In order to fight, you have to have some mean-spiritedness. You have to have a darkness to you. And if you're going to be as out of shape as him, you better have some evil in you. And he's a girl, basically. He's a cool chick.
All right. What about RFK Jr.? You beaten him?
I think I could now. He's in great shape, but he's still old as hell. I think that would be a good fight, though. I'm not a very good fighter.
Really?
I'm probably the worst at my gym. They call me the mayor of Cupcakeville.
You can't call it Destiny for being soft, then call yourself that. That's crazy.
Well, it's all relative, right? Like there's real at my gym. I'm the only guy there who understands percentages.
Okay,
like I'll go there and I'll be like, what percentage of the time do you do weights and what percentage do you just come in and spar? And they're like, oh, I do weights like a lot. Yeah, well, what out of like 10 visits, what percentage? Like, oh, a lot, like a fair amount. They wouldn't even say a fair amount. And then one of the coaches comes over to me and goes, they don't do percentages. Don't.
The smart cupcake. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe Rogan.
Oh my God. I would be dust. I would be sand. I'd be you know how you hear about if people are near a certain radius of a nuclear war, you see the shadow. I would be ephemera. Oh, are there black flies in here? And then you realize, oh, it's my ashes floating around the room.
Okay.
Punch through my chest.
Okay, Hunter Biden.
He's probably like crack is good at getting your body fat down.
Yeah, he's high out of his mind.
He's not fat, and I didn't know if we're allowed to do drugs or not. But I'd probably beat him up. But like RFK Jr., that would be a good fight. Like we'd both be bloodied. I'd have an eye sealed shut, and he, because of his endless abuse from his father, he has that killer instinct. Like he's like a rat. He's like he's like someone tried to domesticate a coyote by beating it a lot, and it just like, turned into this sort of deranged mutt. Like that's what he was. He's an abused mutt. Probably
don't forget
my balls.
He's got crackhead strength too, which is a real thing.
Yeah. No, he'd grab shit like he'd put his thumb up your ass. Like you couldn't turn your back on him. It would not exactly be what's the Queens of Mayberry rules.
That would be. I would pay a lot to see that fight. Okay,
me too.
Yeah, well, what about Cenk Uygur? You beating Cenk Uygur?
He's got good body mass, but I think that would be a good fight too. I think he's probably stronger than me, but he probably doesn't have any technique. But with that kind of big shoulders and fatness, when they get you, it's like butterball. Like it really, boom, could carry it. So that would be a good one. He might win. I don't know.
He said he said he'd beat Rogan. I don't know if you saw that, but swear to God.
Understand. Rogan's been doing this since he was a little kid. Sort of like Hunter Biden. He was a neglected little boy who was, child of a single mom and he didn't want to get bullied and figured out a way to avoid that. It's not like he just got into MMA this year. Like that's been a thread throughout his entire life. And you do something like that. And it's not just like, I only know boxing. He knows like weird moves where like he holds your arm with his knees like that. And then he's like, give or I'm going to break it. I'm going to break it. Yeah,
but we're saying boxing fight, not like street fight or something like that. Okay. So in your realm, it's in your realm.
Good distinction to make. unless Cenk is like doing some crazy training I don't know about.
Okay, all right.
No, he's just overconfident.
Cenk, if you're watching, Gavin's officially challenging you to a match.
I'd love to street fight Cenk actually more than
really.
Yeah, I want to make him bleed.
I mean, there's all these influencer fights nowadays, and we saw your boxing, and we're like, oh, well, Gavin should get in there. Now, it's kind of a game for young folks, at least that's getting in the ring now. But, I mean, people would pay a lot of money to see Gavin McInnes versus Cenk Uygur in a boxing match. Yeah,
people don't get to how much fighting sucks. Like, I hate sparring. It hurts. Even if you're sparring a friend, you have a tender forehead for like 4 days. If you get your rib cracked, which is just one good punch, you can't sneeze for 5 weeks. It's really brutal and uncomfortable to spar. Yeah. So the idea that people just want to jump into, and Proud Boys, when they have meetups, they always have a ring and they're fucking drunk with no gear on at all, just boxing gloves, beating the shit out of each other. And I'm like, guys, they're like, do you want to step in? I go, no. If I'm going to fight someone, I don't go out the night before. I have a breakfast essential in the morning and it's then go meditate. This idea of like, I think fighting spontaneously after you've done 10 beers is crazy.
No, it hurts. I actually did. The first time I sparred was with a buddy of mine after we'd probably had 10 beers. And he was like, oh, you have boxing gloves in your car? And I was like, yeah. I'll show you a couple moves. Worst headache I've ever had in my life the next day. Worst
I think I'm just guessing, but I think you're way more prone to being knocked out when you're drunk. Because I see it on these street fights. You see the guy like, what are they going to do? And he goes,
yeah.
He doesn't even go ow or sort of fall. He just turns to dust.
Yeah. And in the back of the head, that's where they end up dying, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. You have any more questions before we want to move on? Oh, also, before we do anything else, I saw you were going to be in Nashville, right?
You're doing a comedy show next weekend, I think. Is that it? Yeah, the 14th.
Yeah, we're based in Nashville. We saw that.
Great. Come on down.
hopefully there's
should.
still tickets available. We just saw that this morning. So
That's a very coy way of asking to be put on the list. Yes.
No. I was honestly just saying. I mean, well,
backstage passes or we're not coming.
Better be VIP immediately.
Yeah, come on down.
That's gonna be fun.
You know what's fun about these comedy shows too is I was pretty nervous when I first started doing them, and then I realized I'm like when I say we, like me, Josh, Kumia, this tiny handful of people are the only ones who can say whatever the we want. We can say N words and F words and, the most disgusting jokes, talk about, anal sex and how bad that must be for your asshole. Basically, it's 80s comedy, like when you can say whatever you want. And that's, once you realize that, it's this total cathartic release where you're like, there's all this material sitting on the floor that no one will touch. And I can just pick it up and have it. It's like free material. Racist jokes are just
censorship is hurting the comedy sphere. Censorship is destroying comedy.
Well, I was watching this black comedian and he was talking about how Trump is a real he's like a tangerine and everyone's laughing and it was funny. But I realized a lot of black comedians are funny because they can be. Like Key and Peele are, I think, some of the best sketch comedians in the history of the world. But they have no rules. And so they can do whatever they want. SNL, all these other, SNL's a bad example because they've always sucked. But a lot of other comedians and especially like straight white male comedians, they have such a limited amount of material they can use. So I think a true comedian, believe it or not, Sarah Silverman said this back before she went on the right side of history. She said, when I go down to write a joke, I cannot be thinking about how this is interpreted.
Yeah,
I have
you can't
100% focus on, is this funny? Now, she's since ignored her own advice, but I think that's such a smart way of putting it. It's almost like writing a song or doing it, making any kind of art, drawing a picture. You have to focus on, is this what I wanted? Is this what I was trying to do? Unfettered. And that's so rare in comedy these days.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity cost of not muffling your speech is so high. It's probably the highest it's ever been, at least in the history of our nation.
Well, it's also a huge risk, though, too. You have
I mean, obviously, we're talking to somebody on censored TV. So, but I mean, but seriously, but he's selling out like clubs and stuff like that. Although the clubs will like not have you if you go too far. I have seen that happen to some people, which is unfortunate.
There's very few clubs that will take us. Like I said to the organizer, I go, what about Utah, where there's more, conservatives, or Ohio? He goes, I tried all those clubs. They all tell you to f off.
Really?
So doing the same club in Dallas that we did last year, because we know the guy and he's buddies with us. We did this club in Baltimore. It was the top floor of a seafood restaurant where they set up a stage and moved all the tables and put chairs in there and everything. And this is because they get harassed. Like the town of Rutherford, New Jersey, we had a big show planned there, beautiful theater. The guy was like, I want to fight Antifa. I hope they show up. Then the chief of police called him and suggested, in not so many words, that it would be best if he did not have the show. Now, he needed to do a bunch of renovations, and the city of Rutherford against you when you want to renovate a theater, it's not going to happen. So he shut that down. So that was the chief of police shutting down the show.
Wow.
Ostensibly. We got legal, so I have to be careful what I say here because I took them to court. But finding a venue is difficult.
Have you had?
We can't announce it until the day of.
Right. That's what I was going to ask. Have you had protesters show up at your shows and whatnot?
Well, the frustrating thing is they don't have the balls to show up. Like we have had a couple show up, but there's Proud Boys there. There's all these conservatives that want to kick their ass. So you'll have like 5 Antifa nerds, one fat chick, and some guy who's like praying mantis tall. You know those guys who are like 6'8"? They don't look like they're right in their body. They'll show up with their pink hair, and then like the people just go, should we fight you, or what do you want to do? And then they would just leave. But the frustrating thing about the right is, and this goes back to Fox News, fawning over everyone black or gay or whatever. We're so easily dominated. Like the thing that set off the Rutherford thing was some chick sitting on her couch saying, we're going to come down there and fuck shit up. And then they'll find out what the venue is and they'll contact the staff. They'll contact the staff's family. And this is all from a computer, just sitting on their ass. And I said to the chief of police, I go, some fat chick with ugly tattoos and green hair is your boss. She tells you what to do. He's like, oh, let's agree to disagree. And I'm like, these assholes don't even have to riot. Like we have one riot in 100 years, we go to jail for 100 years. They sit on their ass, they riot whenever they feel like it, but they mostly sit on their ass and send tweets and texts and threats, and we comply. So we have a lot of culpability in this tyranny because we're being terrorized by the weak, by the shrill minority, by the nerds. It's revenge of the nerds. And the problem is that we comply. If someone calls up if you own a fucking photocopying place and someone calls up the place and goes, one of your employees is a Proud Boy or a fascist or a white supremacist, you just tell the person to fuck off. You don't cancel them. We got to stop firing people for being drunk in public and saying something like, go back to where you came from, like that Karen on the train.
Yeah, I did see that video. Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's just being a drunken bitch. Slap her.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
we're becoming more and more like Canada, just can't stop apologizing. And
it's weird, but the business owners are mostly conservative, but they still bend the knee to whoever is making the phone calls saying that whatever the Karen is. I don't know why that exactly is. Maybe it's because they've spent their whole life building up this business. They're like, okay, whatever, just fan this flame. But at the same time, it's like, then you end up with a nation of cowards. So
it's fatherlessness. I don't know. Like my dad would never permit me to behave like that. Like the idea of disappointing him, even now that he's 80, just absolutely crushes me. And these people don't seem worried about disappointing their father. Mm-hmm. They'll just fuck everyone over and laugh about it later. And it's a lack of backbone in this country. So it's fun to criticize the left and everything, but the left is only effective if we comply. And we've been complying for way too long.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I know it's gonna be interesting to see, like, hopefully punk rock doesn't die with, y'all's generation. Who do you see kind of carrying the punk rock torch going forward?
This young generation, I think, is pretty exciting. I'm a pro Jew guy. I'm a Zionist, but I love Nick Fuentes. I don't have to agree with people. Sam Hyde is exciting. Elijah Schaefer, Fleckus and Rat Boy are fucking awesome. Ashley St. Clair, Isabella O'Reilly, Isabella DeLuca. Who? Ella Malding is great. There's the new young like Zoomer young millennials. So Savannah Hernandez.
Oh yeah, she's great.
Even Sarah Gonzalez, she's kind of old, I guess, but she's more my generation.
Yeah, we know her.
She's part of the young generation in many ways. John Doyle, that's his name.
Yeah, he's pretty.
Heck you, Kami. He's really. I'm really excited about him. And that's a bigger list, by the way, than I would have had of exciting conservatives 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I'd say like Steve Saylor. I'd say Pat Buchanan. I'd start running out of names pretty quickly. So there's a really exciting movement with very young conservatives. And I think it's because the left blew it by having too many rules. So the young people are like, okay, what team has the least amount of rules? And they see our side, especially when I say our side too, I mean like conservatives who don't see themselves as that conservative. Like my friends are and I smoke weed and you know what I mean? Like I'm not uptight about any kind of cultural thing and I don't really care who whom. So we tend to call ourselves not lefts. I know I'm not, but I don't feel comfortable as a Republican. Like me and Sean Hannity are going to go get burgers, really? Or even me and Pat Buchanan going to get burgers. Like they don't like punk. So I feel like this brand new generation, though, is really exciting. And I know I'm missing names, but the fact that I can just rattle off a dozen without even thinking about it is a good sign. Who? I said him.
Yeah, I do think the pendulum is swinging for sure. And like I think the next generation is kind of fed up with all the the distrust in the media, and that's normal now. And the pendulum is swinging, which is a great sign.
They hate politics. Like they see the American divorce and they hate marriage. Like you talk to someone whose parents are divorced and they're never going to get married. And I think that young people like late teens, early 20s, they see how Trump split up the country. And I'm not blaming Trump. I'm just saying that there were so many brats that they freaked out when someone told them it was bedtime. And they see that kind of split and they go, okay, I don't want anything to do with any of that, which is good too, because that's what libertarians want. They don't necessarily want you getting involved in politics. They want you staying out of everyone's business. And the modern left, my generation's left, Gen X left, they want to meddle. They want to stop you from saying that or thinking that or doing that.
Yeah, that's a problem with the people who just want us to be left alone, is then the tyranny comes to your doorstep, and the people that don't want to leave you alone come to you. So you kind of have to meet them. But yeah, I mean, people are rejecting the institution of marriage like crazy, especially in our generation. It's just like I'm sure you've seen the red pill movement. It's like blown up out of nowhere, essentially. And it's like, it used to be very conservative.
Early things, Pearl. She's really been pushing it recently, and it's a death knell in a way. I totally understand Pearl's logic, and she's right about everything she says. But she should also know that the end of marriage is the end of civilization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a scalable mindset, especially. Well, I mean, our birth rate is negative, so we have to overproduce going forward, because otherwise it would just be the depopulation will completely ruin our entire society, and our country will go under. So I don't know. It'd be interesting, but I don't know. Do you think what do you make of that? The red pill movement just coming up out of nowhere. I mean, do you think there's like Fresh and Fit, there's Pearly Things, there's a couple more too. As a general consensus, it seems like there's just a rejecting of a marriage. I mean, just kind of commitment in general and kind of institutions more broadly. But yeah, what do you think about that?
I don't know. Is that what's that one where that dude with the beard takes the low hanging fruit and humiliates stupid girls? Is that Fresh and Fit? Where it's a round
that's the whatever pod.
Yeah. Oh, whatever's.
Yeah. He's not anti-marriage. He seems to be criticizing OnlyFans and all that kind of stuff. To criticize OnlyFans is to promote marriage.
I don't know. There's
definitely the opposite of marriage.
Well, that's no, you're right about that. But there's definitely the no-fault divorce and stuff like that takes so much heat that it's like almost like not worth it for men to get married nowadays. That's kind of an overwhelming sentiment I see, at least like among my generation.
Definitely like this year that's been the buzz.
That's true.
But how old are you guys?
I'm 23,
25.
Yeah, you'll meet the one, and then it'll just sort of happen. I was anti-marriage. I didn't want kids either. And then as soon as I met my wife, I was like, what the was I thinking? Married her and made a bunch of babies. It's fun.
That's good to know. That's hopeful.
Yeah. It's really fun. I mean, how long are you going to bang random chicks for and get wasted? You steal your parents' liquor when you're 14. By the time you're 24, it's been 10 years of decadence. You get the idea. It's time to go to the next chapter. It's a cool chapter. Trust me. It's fun.
Yeah, it's a stage of maturing too,
Yeah, you got to hang up your punk rock cleats one day, huh?
You can't have a mohawk when you're bald. It doesn't match up.
Well, it's true.
All right, you got more questions?
I'm good, man. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Gavin, for doing this.
Gavin, you're the man.
This is a great conversation.
We're coming to your show here, so it's you, Kumia. Who else is there?
Josh Denny, and Ryan here does he introduces the each act as a different guy, as Trump, as RFK Jr.
Ryan's just killer at impressions.
Jesse Lee Peterson. It's fun.
That's hilarious. All
awesome.
right.
Well, it's been great, brother. Appreciate it. Great meeting you.
See you there. Cheers.
Thanks, Gavin.
Stay alive.
We'll try.